Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna kick off today's legislative website training part 2. Thank you everyone who's joining us today. Nice to see some of you back from last week. Tanya, it's nice to see you after we got to meet last week for the podcast. But before we get started, our team is gonna go through and give some introductions really fast. My name is James Simmons. I'm the Deputy Press Secretary for Progress Iowa, and I use he, him pronouns. And I'm just gonna kick it over to Ivy.
Hi, I'm Ivy Beckenholt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the digital director here at Progress Iowa. And yeah, I'm excited to get started. I know the legislative website is confusing, so definitely want to help out with that. And I'm just going to throw it on over to Amy.
Hey everyone, Amy Adams, and I am organizer here with Progress Iowa, and I use she, her pronouns, and Sam.
Hi everyone, I'm also an organizer with Progress Iowa. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm excited to be here today to also continue to learn with you all.
Yes, like everyone on our team is saying, the legislative website is extremely confusing, especially if you're not overly familiar with it. Even for those of us who use it a lot, it can be very confusing and overwhelming. So we're going to go through some more in-depth topics this week for our training than we did last week. We're still going to open up at the end for questions that we can go through. This training is going to be recorded, but just the training portion, the conversation at the end will not be recorded. So feel free to put stuff into the chat and stuff then. And if you have questions throughout, you can drop them into the chat as well. We have Sam monitoring it, so she will be able to watch that. But before we kick off and actually jump into the website, I'm going to go through and explain what Funnel Week is, because we just had Funnel Week last week, and that was all over the news, and there's going to be a second Funnel Week coming up in March. So Funnel Week is the self-imposed deadline by the House and the Senate to keep bills moving forward at the pace that the leaders want them to, so that way session is going through, because they have a limited number of days that they're allowed to meet for session, or paid for session. But so they have their own internal timeline that they try to keep bills moving on, so that way they can keep legislation moving forward and the government keeps going. Last week was the first Funnel Week, which meant that all bills that did not meet the requirements of Funnel Week are now no longer eligible for debate or consideration for the rest of session. Now, there are two things to look at there. We're going to look at the consideration of what the eligibility was for Funnel Week, but also there is a caveat to this rule. Budget bills and tax bills are not dead during Funnel Week. They are kinds of bills that can come up at any point during session and that can be introduced to work with. So if the Department of Human Services budget was not passed last week, that does not mean the department is shutting down. It just means that they have to consider that before session ends, so that way it does get the funding it needs. So last week, the first funnel of the session, what the requirement was that bills had to pass out of the subcommittee and the full committee of both chambers to be considered. So if like the transgender bill that was voted on last night, that was awful, and that got voted on. That was a bill that they rushed through last week. It got through subcommittee, it got through committee, and once it was out of there, it then became eligible for consideration this week, which is why it was up on the floor. So all bills that survived the subcommittee vote and the committee vote goes on. Thank you. And if you see too, Amy Adams just dropped a Des Moines Register article into the chat as well that has some more information, some more in-depth information about this as well for your own perusal later. We have one more Funnel Week that is coming up in March. It is on March 18th. The funnel for that week, all bills have to have been passed out of committee, subcommittee, committee, and have been passed by one of the chambers to be considered by the other chamber. So we have about 3 weeks coming up to the next Funnel Week. And so in that time frame, if bills are not fully passed out of one of the chambers and voted on and passed out of the chamber on the House floor or the Senate floor, they will no longer be in consideration for debate or passage for the rest of session this year. I'm going to go ahead and take a pause there. If anyone has any notes or anything they want to write down. Again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat and we will get to them later. But that is the overrun of Funnel Week. I am now going to share my screen so we can go to the actual website. All right, can everybody see that? Awesome. Cool. So what we're looking at on my screen is the Iowa Legislative website. We've gone through how to find your legislators, how to find their emails and everything, and we can the video from last week was shared with everybody. And again, if everybody has any review questions you'd like to ask at the end or put it in the chat, please feel free. But what we're going to look at right now is how to find reports that come along with the legislation that has been introduced at the Capitol. There are different kinds of reports. There are fiscal analysis reports, which just talk about the financial aspect of the bills, the implementation of the bills, like how much it would cost to enforce it if there's a new offense added, such as a misdemeanor or a felony, a new law about that. There's reports called correctional impact reports that talk about how this could affect Iowa's public correctional facilities and jail houses and stuff in general. And the other report that we're going to be finding today is called the Minority Impact Report. Now, this report is super cool and super important for a lot of reasons. One, what it does in general is it looks at different legislation, specifically those that add different offenses like the misdemeanors or felonies to the Iowa's legal system, because we know that minority communities, especially Black communities, are policed and at a much higher rate than other communities. And so we know that while a bill in one area may be helpful in a lot of different ways, that it could inadvertently do something to disproportionately affect minority communities. And so the Minority Impact Report, which was passed back when the Democrats had the trifecta back in 2009, became the first in the nation. We became the first state in the nation to have a Minority Impact Report. It's really cool. University of Iowa's law school just did a report on it with Wayne Ford. I recommend it to everybody. But anyways, to find those reports, we're on the main page of this legislative website, and we're going to go up here to this tab that I'm highlighting called Publications. From there, we're going to click on Publications, and it's going to load us to this LSA Publications screen. From this screen, from this left-hand side over here, there's a menu, and there you can click on a couple of different things, but this top one, LSA Publications, which is the default screen that Publications brings you to, has this list of during session right here, during session information and post-session information. So these will give you stuff from previous years. These reports and stuff will give you information from previous years that you can find from 2021 or backwards, and bills that were passed and everything. But for stuff that is going on currently in session, we're going to click on this part here that says Fiscal Notes. When that page loads, it's going to say Fiscal Notes at the top. It's going to have a couple of these things up here that give you some information on what the Minority Impact Reports are, correctional impact reports, and as well as the fiscal note guides. And those are all down along here. You'll see on this page over here, you can click on it. So for this one, I'm just going to grab Service Animals and Misrepresentation, a bill that was introduced. From the title of it, I clicked on the side there where it had the House file, and it takes you to the bill book. And so this is a bill talking about people who have service animals, and a bill related to that. So from there, you can see Correctional Impact Report, because this law has to do with an offense that someone could have. So it has to give this report about how it could add cost to the judicial branch, the public defenders, and other such things as just prison. On the same page, there's also that minority report over here that you can click view. And these reports, which you can download, you can read online, go through, and they have a bunch of different information that are pertinent to what they're doing. So this Minority Impact Report is talking about demographic information, talking about Iowa's prison demographic information and the representation of different races and groups within the correctional system based on population in Iowa. So, but that right there is how you find a number of the really important reports that we use to track how legislation is going to affect everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back here. And with that, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I will kick this over to Ivy.
Thank you, James. Yeah, that was really important because I don't even think I knew where to find those. So yes, very good information to have. As Amy said in the chat, these can be used, for talking points when contacting legislators. So that's just a really good thing to note. So
Ivy,
that,
can I interrupt you?
yeah, go ahead.
I also forgot to add during my funnel week speech that some of the bills that we are looking at are going to change names. Some bills are introduced as House study bills or Senate study bills, which are the preliminary write-up for different legislation that subcommittees are viewing, and they're looking at it to see like what they want to keep, what they want to change, or what they would recommend for passage or not to the full committee. And so if you're following a bill, I'm going to make up a number, but say House Study Bill 101, the name of that bill may change on the website or like in general as it's going through, but you can still go to the bill book, which we explained last week, and that video is out there. But you can go to the bill book and look up House Study Bill 101, and it will find that bill for you and show you the updated name along the left-hand side where it shows you where it's at in the process.
Thank you, James. Yeah, that's a really good point. And two, if like you guys need a refresher on anything as well, just remember that Amy is going to send a sheet of everything that we went over, kind of simplified version, and she'll email you guys that. And this video will also be on our YouTube just in case. So yeah, that was really good information, James. And I'm going to share my screen here too. And I'm just going to go over some of the more basics of the website just to navigate around. We talked a little bit about the basics last week, but we're going to talk about a few more right now. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can you all see the legislative website? Good, perfect. Okay. So this obviously is the legislative website, this interesting thing. Sometimes it can be very confusing. So we're going to go over some of the, basic things such as how to find live floor proceedings. This is really important, especially when there are debates like last night, talking about transgender students in sports. If you were wanting to catch that when it was happening, you could just go on the main page. It says currently in the Senate or currently in the House, and you just click the live button. It'll be right there. You'll just click on that, and then it will show you what's happening in the House. Right now, Republicans and Democrats are going to caucus, so the video is not on, but if it were, you just press the play button. So that's pretty simple on how to do that. Again, that's just on the main page. But let's say that you wanted to watch last night's debate and you weren't able to, but you want to go back and watch it now. You can also do that by going under currently in the Senate or currently in the House, and you click Daily Archives. So that'll just take you to all these videos. So yesterday's, we know that it was like the later video, so you can click on it. But if you're also wondering which video it is, you can just see on the side that it was 3 hours, so it seemed important. There are already 97 views, so it kind of gives you the hints that this was an important topic. So you just click on the link, and then it will show you the video over here. You just press play, and then there it goes. So that is how to find those live floor proceedings and the daily archives. So that can especially be helpful if you were just wanting to, check out what someone said. If you're someone who's really into social media and wanting to, quote what these legislators said during a debate, that could be helpful as well. So now that we've seen how to find these live proceedings, there are a few other things that we're going to go over. So let's go ahead and see, how do you know that something is going to be debated that day? It's kind of hard to keep up on things, but if you follow people on social media, that can be very helpful. You can follow Progress Iowa, a little plug, or you can follow your legislators. Zach Walls is really great. Sarah Trungariot in the Senate, ComFirst in the House, people like that. They're going to keep you updated a lot. So those are great people to follow. But if you wanted to look for yourself, you can find the debate eligibility calendar by going to the legislation tab. That's right here at the top. And then you'll see on the left-hand side, there are a few different tools. You'll just click on debate eligibility calendar. So then on the side where it says daily debate calendar over here on the right, you can click Senate, you can click House, and then it will tell you what is coming up for the day. Now it's good to keep in mind that sometimes they'll be on the debate calendar, but they'll be pushed to another day. So it's not always a guarantee. Another thing to keep in mind is that you'll probably want to look towards the bottom to see if something really controversial is going to be debated today. In the Senate, maybe not. It talks a little bit about, the last one, something about hunting turkeys. So maybe they're not going to do anything crazy today. But you never know. They might be hiding something in there. So that's just a good tip to know about to find what stuff is going to be eligible for debate. So not only can you look there for, bills and what's going to come up, but you can also check your calendar, and the daily calendar for things that are happening in the subcommittee and committee. This week, there's not a lot going on necessarily because last week was funnel week. That was the week they were really in subcommittee and committee. Right now, they're doing a lot of debates. But whenever you want to look at that, you just click on committees and schedules over here at the top. Then on the left-hand side, the first one's called schedules. So you click that. So it tells you today in the chambers, Senate and House. You can click on that. And it just tells you all of the subcommittees that are going on right now. There's not that many, so might not be anything important. Might be you'd have to click on the legislation right here, the bill. It would take you to the bill book. And then you can read there. So that is how to find what's happening daily in the subcommittee and committee, which bills have to go to before they reach the floor. But you can also see your weekly calendars down here in the middle. You can click on the House calendar. You can see, okay, these are the things that are supposed to happen this week. So today is Tuesday, so they had session at 8:30, at noon, and they're going to have subcommittees at 5, 10, things like that. That just helps give you like kind of an understanding of what's going to go on. It looks like today's stuff is going to go kind of late because they're doing 12 and then 5. On Mondays, they usually start later. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that is how to find your weekly schedules and calendars. And if you guys have any questions on that, you can always put them in the chat. The only thing left to really go over is lobbyist declarations. So you can find those when you're looking at a bill. So the way to do that is you're going to go, there are a few ways, but let's go to legislation up here, this tab. And if you were watching last time, we talked about to find legislation, you click it and then you click bill book. And then you can put in the bill that you're looking for. If you don't know the name, you can always put in a keyword. But let's look at the bill from yesterday, that trans girls in sports bill. So that one was called HF 2416. You just click go, then it tells you the bill, all the information. You can look on the bill history on the left. You can see that it passed the House with 55 votes. So that's good information to have, but you'll also maybe want to see who was lobbying for this bill. That could be important, especially while things are in subcommittee, so that you can reach out to, the appropriate people, or you can just know who's really behind this bill. So you'll go over here to related information, and then you click lobbyist declarations. So then you can have a list of who was undecided, against, or for the bill. So for yesterday's bill, you can see that One Iowa was against the bill. They're an LGBTQ advocacy group. So yeah, they would be against the bill. You can also see like Apple was against the bill. That's something that, you might not have known that they were even lobbying for. So that's just good to know. Yeah, family leader for the bill. So that checks out, but this is just good information to have. Yeah, that's pretty much how to find it. But if you were also wondering, not just about specific bills, but about specific lobbyists, what you could do is you could go on the right-hand side and you can just click lobbyist information. So if you search lobbyist declarations right here in the middle, you click on that, and then it will tell you who lobbyists are. They could tell you who they lobby for. Let's say that you're curious about, you see Melissa Peterson talking at a lot of meetings. She works for ISEA. You might be curious on who she works for. So you can just click to type in her name that you've seen, Melissa Peterson, submit, and then you can see that she works for Iowa State Education Association and all of the bills that they're lobbying for and against. So that's kind of how to do that. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And if anyone had any questions, definitely leave them in the chat. Let me see if there's any, but, and yeah, if Amy or James were looking at the chat too and have any
Yeah.
questions they wanted to address, that'd be great.
There we had one from Barb, and it was, is there a way that we can see what time that they're going to debate something? So that's a really good question. So we can be timely on tracking that.
So I would say that that's something that I also struggle with, finding out what time they're going to debate something. I'd say that Twitter is just a really good resource to keep you updated on what time they're going to debate. I'll talk to Amy too, and she can email you guys some Twitter people to follow, some legislators that usually keep people up to date. That's basically the best way I would say. I'd say if it's very controversial, it's going to be later in the day, but it can be hard to tell. Did you have any more insight on that, Amy?
No, I would just add to what you said, Ivy. When you pulled up the calendar, it shows what bills are eligible to be debated on that day. Typically what happens is when it says like they'll start the debate, like if it's at like 1 o'clock or whatever, they tend to put the least controversial bills at the front of it because they know they can go through the procedures pretty quickly and vote those through. And then the bad bills tend to be voted on later on. But you have to remember too, they can always pull a bill or, something can be like immediately messaged. So those kinds of things happen. And unfortunately, I haven't seen it publicized where they put on there at exactly the time that it is. But if you have a Democratic lawmaker that you follow, there are some really great ones. Senator Sarah Trungary, it's a wonderful one. Rob Hogue is a great one to follow in the Senate. Lindsey James is one in the House. She's really great to follow. And a lot of times they will on their social media tell you, we are debating this at 1 o'clock or we're debating this at 6 o'clock. And then that way when to tune in. But that is definitely if they had one of those comment jars to drop in at the end, that would be a comment to drop in to put when the times of debates are. But it does change to, usually the lawmakers have that best information because they're on the floor. And unfortunately, we don't have as many reporters reporting from the State House. So it is challenging to get that information from reporters too.
Everything they just said, and I'm just gonna jump off of that and say too, the schedules change a lot too and things happen, but that it's also kind of the place that without seeing it on Twitter or someone else, you can try to figure out for yourself. If there are committee meetings scheduled all morning, but then there's session in the afternoon and there's nothing scheduled, there's a chance that they'll be using that time for debate. But they also schedule stuff in the afternoon and then cancel it to have debate. So yeah, that list of people to follow will probably be your best resource.
Ready for me to jump in? Okay. It always takes me just a minute to share my screen here. Okay, so just a couple of things. Depending upon what was debated, like last night, the bill that we've been talking quite a bit about is that transgender ban in girls' sports. So if you are looking to find out the votes that occurred on a particular debate or on a particular bill, the best way to find that is on this main page. And just a really quick little hint, a tip, anywhere you click on this blue bar, it will take you to the home page. So if you're ever off in the weeds somewhere and you just want to get back home, just click on this blue-gray space that says Iowa Legislature, and it'll take you right back to the home page. But a really great feature on this page is House floor votes by bill, and then Senate floor votes by bill. And so you can click directly on this link. So House floor votes by bill. And this goes in chronological order. So if you don't happen to know the date of the bill, if you just think that it was in the last couple of weeks or the last few days, if you know the number House file or the description of it, you can go ahead and click on that, and this House file will take you to the description of the bill. And what you want to click on to find out how your representative voted is right here, where it says vote PDF. So you can see the vote count was 55 people voted in support of it, 39 people voted against it, and then there were 6 legislators that didn't vote. So I'm going to click on the vote PDF. And then what this does is this takes me to the roll call vote. So it tells me who the sponsor of the bill was, Skylar Wheeler, what the bill was, eligibility of girls sports. So there were amendments that were on it, and those amendments were on the previous page, and you can see those amendments and how they were voted. You can see the time that this was prepared, and then here are the lists of the legislators who voted for it. And I'll admit, I went through last night because I just wasn't sure because there was one Republican there just kind of hanging out in the no column. And then you can see who is absent, and then who is presiding, which was Speaker Grassley. So that is one way to see the votes. So this tab over here where it says amended votes, what this will do is it will take you through every single amendment that was debated for that particular bill. And you can see, clicking on the link here, what the bill was, how the vote turned out, and then again, clicking on vote PDF, and it will tell you how the votes were for that particular amendment. And I'm going to go ahead and click back here to the home page. And the other thing that I think is really helpful is if you just kind of want to know what happened during one particular day in the legislative session, what you can do is go to legislation. So that those tabs across the top kind of tell you where to go or direct you where to go. So I'm going to click on legislation, and then under legislation, I'm going to click on Senate and House journals. And what these journals are is it's really like a detailed record of everything that happened in the House or in the Senate on a particular day. So the last published journal is always going to be for the last day that they were in session. So this will be for Monday. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Senate Journal. And so it just has the information on here, and it basically goes through the time that they gavelled in. It talks about or it details what bills are in what committees on that particular day. You can click on those and see. This tells you when they gavel in, when they gavel out, when they caucus, who is in attendance, who isn't in attendance. So if you want to find out if your lawmaker is missing, some debates, or if they're gone quite a bit, this is one way to do that. You can check their attendance. But it also just details, it's like the minutes of a meeting, basically. It tells you exactly what happened during that time. So you can see who votes for what, who votes on the bill, who votes on different amendments. And it just basically summarizes the actions that take place in the Senate chamber throughout that entire day. And the other thing that it does too, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Yeah, okay. So like, for example, when it talks about messaging, so after a bill passes, so when it says like immediately message, so what they're doing then is it means that bill has passed one of the chambers and then they're sending it over to the other chamber for consideration. And then there's some notes here about communications received. So these are things where they might get like a report from LSA, like if they get like a financial report or something like that about a bill. And then this is anything that might be coming from like a committee, or if a bill passes out of a committee and it's ready to be introduced for debate. So that information is on these journals as well. So journals are a really detailed way to just get a lot of information about what happened specifically on that day in that particular chamber. So I'm going to go ahead. I love that little blue gray space at the top because it takes me home. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and stop sharing my screen. And if you all have any questions, I think Ivy and James and I can address those for you. And Lori, yeah, I see your comment. Caucus meetings always take up time. So what they'll do a lot of times on that live video screen that Ivy showed you is it will say like Democrats are in caucus or Republicans are in caucus or they're at ease, and so it just lets you know that they're meeting. Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to any questions. If you have questions that aren't in the chat, you can go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions at the bottom, or we're a small group, you can just come off mute too. And Ivy, do we want to stop recording?
Yep, I'll stop recording right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. And I think in the settings, I'm going to take everyone, let everyone go off mute. I think the settings have them not. So let me do that real quick.